Thank you again, everyone, for having me. I am coming to you from the Ontario Caregiver Organization, and my role, as Sarah mentioned, is a regional lead for community engagement, which essentially means I work with caregivers and partners with different agencies and with the general public around what caregivers are facing based on where they are in the province, and make sure that caregiver voices are heard, and that those voices and the needs and the gaps that are identified by caregivers is taken up to the proper channels to levels that can influence decision making and policy and funding, so that we can have appropriate programs for caregivers across the province based on where we are hearing from. So in today's session, we will cover some the landscape of caregivers in Ontario, what caregivers have told us, who they are, and what they identify as their major pain points. We'll talk a lot about stress and burnout and what's the difference between the two. We'll talk a little bit about self-care strategies and then help identify resources that can better assist caregivers throughout their caregiving journey. So who are we? The Ontario Caregiver Organization, we're a relatively new organization. We've been around for about 4 years now, since the spring of 2018. And we're an independent nonprofit agency that's funded by the Ministry of Health, and we are accountable to the Ministry of Health as well. So we exist to improve the lives of Ontario caregivers. That means we want to be that one-stop shop for information and supports, so that if there are any caregivers across the province, and we'll define the term caregivers a little bit down the road. So if there are any caregivers who are looking for any supports for themselves or for the person they're caring for, then our hope is that they're able to come to the Ontario Caregiver Organization and get all the information they need to be better suited and equipped to take care of themselves and that person they're caring for. So we work on different fronts. Primarily, we work to improve the awareness and recognition of the contributions of the importance of caregivers. So when we're looking at it from an economic standpoint, we know that based on where you are in the country, caregivers contribute to anywhere between $26 to $72 billion worth of healthcare money. So we're talking about all of the different things that caregivers do on a daily basis that maybe a professional would have otherwise done, right? So we want to work with the general public to raise the awareness around everything caregivers do. And we also want to work with caregivers to help them identify their needs, and for some instances, even help them identify themselves as caregivers. But because we do come across a lot of individuals who don't see themselves as a caregiver because they may be taking care of their significant other, their child, grandparent, their partner, whatever it may be, their neighbor. And they might think of it as more of a, hey, this is what my relationship is, and this is what I'm supposed to do, without having really realized that they're doing additional things that qualifies them to be as a caregiver. So we also connect, like we said, we connect caregivers to information and supports regardless of age, condition, or location. So we work with anyone across the province who identifies as a caregiver, regardless of where they are in the province of Ontario, regardless of their age. We work with older caregivers. We work with really young caregivers as well. Most of our programs, 99% of our programs are for caregivers 15 and above. But we do come across sometimes, very occasionally, come across very young caregivers, and we have referral mechanisms in place to make sure those young caregivers get the support they need and get to the organizations that can help them best. Additionally, we work towards partnering with different organizations that are already subject matter experts out there in the field. So we want to avoid duplication of services and create those, what I talked about, referral pathways, informal or otherwise formal, to make sure that caregivers have a seamless experience when transferring between different services. So we work with partners on the ground who are not maybe typically speaking with themselves, although they may have complementary services that can really help the caregiver to get them on the table and start having discussions around how they can best support caregivers and work together. And then we also work with caregivers to identify gaps and service needs and to design and build new programs in response. So We have multiple opportunities for caregivers, which I'll talk about as we go down the presentation, for them to provide their input based on what they see on the ground. Caregivers provide the best kind of lived experience, and we draw from that experience to make sure that our programs, our materials, our resources are reflective of the needs and the gaps that are identified by caregivers themselves. So who are Ontario's caregivers? So we at OCO define family caregivers as any family members, friends, or neighbors who's providing care to someone else in an unpaid capacity. And it could be due to a range of different reasons that you see on the screen. More recently, we are seeing a lot of new caregivers entering the field because the person that they're caring for, the care recipient, that's what we call them, the care recipient maybe has complications as a result of COVID-19, for example, right? So we work with caregivers regardless of their age, regardless of their background, regardless of where they're in the province, and regardless of the medical situation. When we're looking at numbers, we see that there are about 4 million caregivers across Ontario. That includes young caregivers. From an age standpoint, a large percentage, almost 60%, are between the age of 36 and 65, who also identify as being part of the sandwiched generation, as in they're taking care of someone older to them, while also having responsibilities towards younger family members. But we're also seeing steadily that the number of caregivers aged 65 plus is slowly but steadily on the rise, with folks living longer, with the increase in dementia. We're seeing that a lot of partners, spouses are supporting each other and are active caregivers in this day and age. So we're seeing that number, 12%, is slowly on the rise each year. Unsurprisingly, more than half of caregivers, 54%, identify as female, and 45% identify as male, and 1% as a non-binary. We also know that there are a lot of caregivers who are employed. So about 69% of caregivers are employed. But what has come out of the pandemic is that a large percentage, again close to 70%, of employed caregivers say that it has now become increasingly difficult and challenging managing their caregiving responsibilities while also working either full-time or part-time. So we have developed some tools to kind of help what we call working caregivers in having conversations with their employers around what it means to be a caregiver, so that their employer better understands what their responsibilities are and what they're accountable for, and based on that, create more caregiver-friendly workplaces so that they can be both productive at work while also being more productive in their caregiving responsibilities at home. So when we're looking at who they're caring for, so 1 in 5 care for more than one person. So this could be that individual who is part of the sandwiched generation, but also we have the primary and secondary caregiver. So for example, if there's a father, mother, daughter dynamic, the mother might be the primary caregiver to the father while having her own ailments, and the daughter steps in as the secondary caregiver to the father while also being the primary caregiver to mother. So that kind of dynamic we're seeing more and more increase over time. And we also know that when we're looking at responsibility, the more than half of caregivers say that the top responsibility is to provide emotional support to the care recipient, while other responsibilities include things like offering behavioral supports. For example, if dementia is concerned, then behavioral supports around responsive behaviors. They offer personal care such as bathing, toileting, changing incontinence products. They offer physical support such as lifting and moving, and then they offer medical support as well. Pre-pandemic, primarily administering medications, but over the pandemic, we've seen that a lot of caregivers are now taking on additional, more complex medical responsibilities, such as giving injections, changing catheters, changing wound packages. So those kind of things that, again, professionals kind of actually did those jobs, caregivers are having to take on that responsibility. When we're talking to caregivers throughout the province, we hear a lot of perspectives around what it means to be a caregiver. So while a majority of caregivers feel that there is a sense of fulfillment and appreciate the time they can spend with their care recipient, there are a lot of caregivers who identify that they need additional support and they need a lot of mental health support when it comes to caregiving. So a large part of what we're going to talk about today is around how to better prepare yourself and better be able to mitigate anything related to stress and burnout, right? So when we're talking about the impacts of caregiving, we know that caregiving impacts a person's time. It impacts their employment and work-life balance, their finances, especially during the pandemic. We've heard multiple stories saying that a lot of caregivers felt that they got hit the hardest when it came to finances over the pandemic. It affects their health and wellness, their mental, emotional, and physical and social health as well, and their personal relationships as well. So when we're looking at numbers, we each year do what we call a spotlight report to look at caregiver pain points and to identify which areas caregivers say that they're most stressed out about, or areas that there needs to be more work done in terms of offering programs and services. So we know that caregivers are burnt out. I mentioned that a lot of caregivers say that they have increased financial burden. And then also consistently, most caregivers say that they have disturbed sleep patterns, which leads to them being overwhelmed, being tired, and then which can lead to burnout, eventual burnout as well. So what is caregiver stress? So we experience stress on a daily basis, right? So every day we experience, there are two types of stress. Either we experience good stress or we experience bad stress, right? So what is an example of good stress? If someone is doing physical activity, for example, that's a lot of additional stresses to the body. So that's an example of good stress. And that's something that we encourage people do more of, right? And try and get as much physical activity as possible. But what's bad stress is things that are beyond your control. So things that can affect the person, and you cannot really do anything about those type of stressors, right? So stress is a normal and common feeling that is experienced by almost everybody. Stress is something that comes and goes and can be either positive or negative. And then it is important to remember that stress levels rise and fall. So there's never an instance where someone is continually in stress, right? So people tend to hang on to the moments where they might have low stress. And even if they experience high stress, say, you know what, this is going to pass, right? But sometimes that might not be healthy, because if you don't address the stress, whatever the reason may be, then you'll still be going up and down, and that's not good for the body, right? So over time, that can lead to what we call burnout, right? So what is caregiver burnout? Caregiver burnout is a state of physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion that is a result of prolonged stress, right? We're going to review the more common signs of burnout in the next slide, but it's important to note that most common factors that can lead to caregiver burnout can include a lack of support and services. So a lot of caregivers say that because they don't have anybody else to rely on, they feel like they are the only one responsible, or the only one that can do it according to what they deem is the right way to do it, right? That can lead to maybe sometimes unrealistic expectations of others. So if there's a professional or a PSW or someone coming into the home to help, or even if it's a family member coming in to help, sometimes the caregiver has expectations on the way that they would take care of the care recipient, but it might not be the same as the way that they do it, so which can cause them to be continually looking over the other person's work, and which can cause additional stress and prolonged stress and burnout as well. And then also lack of control. So because they feel that that the other person may not be able to do the job in the best possible way, there's a feeling of lack of control, which can then shut people away and push them away, and then not they may not be able to get the help that they need. So because of that, the lack of control, that feeling, then they have to start doing everything by themselves, which can cause additional stress and burnout as well. So there are tools. I'm going to talk about all of these different signs, but there are tools that can help individuals who are going through or feeling the things that I've been talking about as well. So what are the signs of burnout? So um, the points that you see on the screen are some of the more common signs of burnout. It is important to note that you do not need to experience all of these signs all at once, right, to be in a state of burnout. Some caregivers experience these at different stages, and oftentimes these feelings will become normalized, right? So things like neglecting your own physical and emotional needs, for example, right? So if you love to read a book, but now because you are focusing more on the person that you're caring for, right, you're now starting to neglect reading a book, for example, right? Over time, you won't even start thinking about, oh, I should take time to read a book, or I used to enjoy reading a book, because now it's so normalized for you to ignore the activities that brought you joy, that you and start paying more and more attention to the care recipient, that the person loses control of their own life as well. So reading a book is one example. There are many things that can happen similar to that as well. Anxiety about the future, that's a big one. So a lot of the time we keep saying that the future is something that's out of our control, right? We can do advanced planning. We can take steps to make sure that the things that could happen in the future we are better prepared for. But there is at a point, once that's done, there's no point, I think there's no reason to be more worried about the future. But in terms of burnout, people will start worrying about every single thing that they have to do. So going to the doctor becomes a very, very difficult task, because now you're worried about the small things. What if they're taking wheel strands, for example? What if the wheel strands doesn't come on time? What if the doctor's appointment is late and the person you're caring for doesn't get their meal on time? Whatever the reason. So every small thing starts becoming a bigger issue, and you start worrying about it more. And most of the time, the person who is going through this doesn't even see it in themselves that they're worrying about the small things. It takes someone else who is closer to them, or who's working with them, to make these admissions, to say, hey, listen, you're doing this, you're taking all the small things and you're making them bigger than they need to be. And then only that they can really see for themselves, oh my God, this is what I've been doing. Because again, it goes back to the normalization, because now you start worrying about everything, and then and because you're so much in control, and you're trying to control every aspect of the care that is given to the care recipient, sometimes you tend to forget about all of these small things that you're doing as well. And then you also notice that it drains energy from your body as well. So for a lot of people, a big sign is that inactivity. So the minute you have, again, another minute for yourself, the only thing you want to do is sit and just, contemplate or start thinking, or again, being anxious about things in the future. And then you don't even have energy to maybe cook dinner, and then now you start noticing that you're ordering more and more food from outside, or you're more reliant on other forms of other ways of getting food rather than cooking, which you used to love to do, or at least you had some energy to do, right? And then the other thing is also, you will start noticing changes in your own physical state and your own mental state, right? So you'll become weak. The caregiver will start losing weight, and then eventually, which can lead to other ailments as well. So it's really important that that folks really look at themselves and do self-reflection every now and then, to understand what they're going through at that particular state. Because caregiving is a journey. It's never the same. Every day is never the same, right? And I don't have to tell you this. If you're the caregiver, you know this very well, right? So there are tools in place that can help you through that process. So one tool, for example, is our I Am a Caregiver toolkit. So this toolkit is designed for new caregivers, but also seasoned caregivers who are having difficulty kind of managing their day-to-day activities, right? So this toolkit gives you information around how to better take care of yourself, how to build a care team, for example, and really look at the different activities that are involved around caregiving. You can access the toolkit through that link there. And for example, it gives you the worksheet that will tell you the different activities that a person does during the caregiving. And there are instances where someone calls the caregiver and says, hey, let me know if I can help in any way, but then that never really goes anywhere. So that is a great opportunity to say, hey, you know what, I have this toolkit and I'm glad you offered, because there are these things that I do that I've been trying to help find someone who can help me with. What do you think you would be able to do that for me? So building a support team is really, really, really helpful for the caregiver, and we highly recommend and encourage new caregivers to do this early on in their caregiving journey so that they are better able to understand all of the different demands around caregiving. Because sometimes, like I said, people don't see themselves as a caregiver and may not realize the different type of activities that you might have to take on later on in the caregiving journey based on what the diagnosis or the medical situation may be. So it's really great to be prepared early. So if a point comes where now you don't have the time to do, for example, any meal preparation, then you already have someone you can reach out to and say, hey, you're offered to do this at one point. Can you really help me out through this? And all I need is a 1 week worth of food because I have X, Y, and Z responsibilities towards the care recipient, and I would really appreciate you be able to help me out with that. Right. So this is a really great toolkit for that as well. And then I talked about a self-assessment. So the I Am a Caregiver toolkit also has a self-assessment tool for caregivers to assess how they're coping emotionally throughout their caregiving journey as well. So I will go through the self-assessment questions, and I'll pause maybe for 5 seconds after each question so that you can score yourself. You don't have to tell me what your score is. And then at the end, we'll tabulate that score, and based on where your number is, we'll go to the definition of what's happening with that particular score. Okay, so if the scoring is 0, 1, 2, or 3, so never, sometimes, often, and almost always. So if you find it difficult to balance work, family, and caregiving responsibilities, almost always, then give yourself a 3. If sometimes, then 1. If never, then 0. So I'm going to give you a second to do that. Maybe if you have a pen and paper, you can quickly write this down so you can easily tabulate. I have conflicts with my friends, family members, or care recipient. If you always have conflicts, then give yourself a 3. If you never have conflicts, you can give yourself a 0. I worry that I'm not doing as good a job as a caregiver. So if you're constantly worried about that, give yourself a 3. If never, then 0. I feel guilty, just in general. It doesn't have to be anything specific. Just feel guilty, and guilty around caregiving, right? So it could be anything. Then give yourself a 3 if it's almost always. If it's never, then 0. I feel anxious. Again, reminder, 3 is almost always, 0 is never, 1 is sometimes, and 2 is often. I feel sad and cry periodically. I have problems with sleep. I experience chronic neck or back pain. Again, 0 if never, 3 if almost always. And then I have tension headaches. Okay, so maybe tabulate your scores, add them up, whatever it may be. So because your stress levels and experiences change day to day, right? This is a really great tool to reflect on how you're feeling and where you're at emotionally, and based on that, really seek the assistance that you need. So based on the score that you got, if you got a score from anywhere from 0 to 10, you're probably managing well, right? It's still important to think about the ways to prevent stress from building up. So we'll talk a little bit about prevention as we go along, but it's really important to continually think about it as well. If you're between 11 and 15, you may need to seek out some additional support. Try to identify the things that are causing you stress. It's harder done than said, right? Sometimes you might need to sit down with someone else who can, look at what's happening with you through a fresh set of eyes, for example. If you have your score between 16 and 19, you may be experiencing caregiver distress, and your responsibilities may already be taking a toll on your physical and emotional well-being. So at this point, it's really important you talk to a doctor or a healthcare professional, or family member, friend, or join a support group to help reduce your levels of distress. And then if you're 20 and above, you may be experiencing caregiver burnout. To protect your physical and mental health, it is important to talk to your family doctor or healthcare professional as soon as possible about your stress. And you may also want to talk to family and friends and join a support group and try and see if you can find some sort of a reprieve or respite for the person you're caring for, so that you can, for a brief amount of time, be more focused on your own health as well. So this tool, again, is not meant to be done one and done. It's meant to be done as your caregiving experience changes, as things change within that caregiving role. You do it when you feel that you need to kind of reflect more on what's going on with you because you haven't had time for yourself lately, for example. So this is a great time to do that, to do this quiz as well. And this quiz, along with the worksheet around building your support team, is available in the I Am a Caregiver toolkit as well. So you can go and check it out. Right. So next, let's talk about what you can do when it comes to staying healthy and trying to avoid stress, the bad stress at least. So there are things that are very important in terms of active prevention. Again, for a lot of caregivers, this is easier said than done, right? So the sleep hygiene. We talk to a lot of people around the importance of getting a good night's sleep, as many hours as possible. I think up to 6 or 7 hours per night, as much as possible. Nutrition is a big one. Making sure you're eating healthy, making sure you're having foods that are diverse and different in color. So if you really want to do more around a proper diet, then you can go to Canada.ca and check out their food guide, what's it called, the food pyramid, and they'll tell you what kind of foods are best in terms of nutrition. Exercise is a great stressor, so as much as possible. Restorative breaks. So during your caregiving journey, during the day, just like you would build an agenda for yourself, try and put in purposeful breaks, whether it be 5 minutes, whether it be 10 minutes, where you maybe just close your eyes and sit down for 10 minutes. Maybe it means you go for a swim, if that's possible. Maybe it means go for a quick walk around your neighborhood. Maybe it means sit down and listen to music, read a book. So there are different things, right, that you can do for yourself so that you can basically recharge yourself as well. So restorative breaks. Sometimes, you might have to sit down and create an agenda. And once you start paying more attention to yourself, and then once you start following the agenda, then it'll come to you more naturally, and then you can kind of carry on without an agenda if that point comes. Time in nature. So there is a lot of prescriptions out there, social prescriptions that say that spending time in nature is really helpful in the restorative process. But not everybody has access to nature. Not everybody has the time to go to find nature. So I would substitute that with something that really helps you. Again, recharge. So there are different activities for different people. So find that one that is best for you. And then breathing practices. So that's another great recommendation. If you're able to do a little bit of breathing and mindfulness and meditation, that's really helpful in throughout your caregiving journey as well. So these are more self-care and social support help that you can get either yourself or access through your friends and family and close ones. And then if you are really struggling and if you're at a point of crisis, it might be that time where you need to seek help, right? So at what stage do you really seek help? You seek help when you find yourself constantly worried or fearful for your care recipient. You seek help when you find yourself consistently unhappy, and you really don't know the reason why you're unhappy. You seek help if you're looking for some financial reprieve, and our website has tons of information, and I'll speak to that a little bit as we go around the types of financial options that might be out there for caregivers. Nightmares or flashbacks, traumatic events, disruptions to family life, restricted social life, poor self-care, use of drugs or alcohol, suicidal thoughts. So these are all different points where you might be experiencing crisis or struggling, and it might be a great time to find community supports either through your own family doctor, or through different programs that are available at community health centers, or through different organizations that could help with that. So, for example, OCO has support groups that can help with that as well. And then if it really is bad, then it might be great to go get some emergency services as well. So another self-care activity that we recommend is kind of taking a moment for yourself. And when you have built in those restorative breaks, take a minute to really look at yourself from a physical, emotional, social, professional, and spiritual point of view, and identify as much as you can which part of your life you've neglected the most over the past, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, wherever that may be. So when you do take those restorative breaks, you think to yourself, okay, you know what, today I'm going to focus on my social self. Every Wednesday for the past 30 years, I had always spoken with my friend. And I've noticed in the past couple of months, I really haven't taken time to call them or meet with them. And, my social life is taking a hit. So now I'm going to focus on myself. And even if I cannot physically meet that person, I'm going to build a restorative break sometime in the afternoon where I can take 5 minutes or 10 minutes and call this person and just talk to them. And may not talk to them about my caregiving responsibilities, but may talk to them about what's happening with them, what's happening with other friends, and things that you used to normally talk about before you stopped calling them or stopped talking to them. So that's an example, right? So if you're focusing on your social self, same way, if you feel that over the past couple of months I was ignoring my professional self, I haven't really done I've been doing a great job at work, and I don't feel like I'm really productive, then maybe taking time to say, okay, you know what, I think I should use the toolkit provided by OCO to talk to my employer and talk to him about my caregiving responsibilities, so that we can come up with a better routine where I'm able to focus on my caregiving responsibilities while also being productive at work. So this is a really great self-care activity. You don't have to focus on all 5 things at once. So you just say, over the next month, I'm going to focus on this. And it could be one activity, and you start with that, and then you see how you can build from there on, right? So that I would really recommend, if you have some time, if not, carve out some time to do this activity as well. Okay, so based on all of these things that we talked about, I'm going to go through quickly the programs and services that are available at OCO. So most of our programs and services, again, 99% of them, are built based on feedback that we receive from caregivers throughout the province as well, right? So firstly, we do have a range of webinars that is available through our website that covers these 4 thematic areas. So webinars that revolve around caregiver well-being, financial and legal tips, around advanced care planning, and around caregiver skills and development. So this includes skills to better be able to take care of your own mental health needs as well. So if you have some time, you can go onto our website. If you go onto that link, I will be providing a copy of the slide deck, so you should receive this within the next couple of days, so you can easily access it through this link as well. We also have a helpline. So we've partnered with 211 Ontario to create the Ontario Caregiver Helpline. This is a resource that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, available in English and French, and also available in 150 different services through interpretation services. So if you're looking for supports for yourself, if you're feeling, oh, you know, I need to better take care of myself, I need to learn more about everything around caregiving and what to expect around caregiving, or I need to learn more about the different types of things I can do to better take care of myself. Or for the care recipient, I'm looking for Meals on Wheels programs so that I can, you know, get them the Meals on Wheels and take some time for myself, whatever it may be. Feel free to call the helpline, and the helpline will try and find services for you based on where you're calling from, but also offer you in-house services that we might provide. We also have the SCALE program, which is actually ongoing right now. So this program stands for Support for Caregiver Awareness, Learning, and Empowerment. It includes 8 psychoeducational webinars that caregivers can attend. And what's unique about this program is once they do attend it, they're free to sign up for either individual or group counseling session. A caregiver doesn't need to sign up for all 8 webinars if they want to really focus on find your caregiving strengths, for example. Then you can register for that 1 week and then participate in that 1 week if they'd like as well. We also have an e-learning platform which has the Caregiver 101 course, which I spoke a lot about caregiver stress and burnout. The Caregiver 101 course really goes into depth around what it means to be a caregiver, how to develop resiliency, what kind of supports are available, what is burnout, in much more detail than I talked about. So this course, of course, just based on your pace, could take anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half as well. So you can go and check this out at your own time as well. Everything we offer is free of cost. For the e-learning platform, you have to go in and create a username and password, and you'll be able to access these courses. We also have ongoing peer support groups. So if you're really looking to speak to someone and get that emotional or social support, I encourage you to sign up for any one of our support groups, peer support groups. All of our groups are virtual, so you can just sign up and participate like you did today. The focus of the peer support groups is to offer you that emotional support, but also offer you system navigation help so that you can maybe, if you're looking for more meaningful supports, more long-term meaningful supports, they might be able to guide you towards where those are available based on where you're coming from. On a more personal level, we have a one-to-one peer support program, which pairs a caregiver, pairs you with a peer mentor. And so once you do get paired, then you and the peer mentor would work together on strategies around caregiving, and you can get more emotional, one-on-one emotional support from the peer mentor. The peer mentor is an experienced peer caregiver themselves, and they go through peer mentorship training with OCO on how to be a peer mentor. When you do sign up for this peer one-to-one peer support program, the partnership could last for up to 1 year. So this is because we want the peer mentor and the caregiver to kind of build rapport so that they can get the most out of the relationship as well. On a more public facing front, we have a podcast, which is available through major podcast providers. We invite caregivers themselves and subject matter experts to talk about different topics related to caregiving, such as what it means to become a caregiver, managing money, keeping relationships strong, getting a good night's sleep. Most recently, we launched season 2, which talks a lot heavily on the healthcare system, how to navigate it, what does it mean to, for example, for caring for someone with a mental health or addictions challenge, or what cultural differences may arise when it comes to caregiving. So feel free to check this out as well. We also have websites where you can access tons of different information. If you are, or if you know a young caregiver, we recommend the youngcaregiversconnect.ca, which is a sister site that we operate, which is led by young caregivers themselves, right? So that their forums and all of the content are driven by young caregivers, and it's a safe space for young caregivers to come together and have discussions around what they're experiencing through their journey. And then we also offer newsletters and quarterly e-bulletins and information through our social media channels as well. We recently launched our 90-second caregiver letter. So the letter, the 90-second caregiver letter was created by a Dr. Patrick McGrath, who is a Canadian clinical psychologist who works with a team of health experts to create succinct and accurate health information. So a lot of caregivers said that, sometimes we get information, we get papers and articles and journals about different things, and it's too long, or it's too complicated, or medical terminology heavy for us to understand what they're talking about. So the 90-second caregiver letter is meant for the caregiver to read it within 90 seconds, and the information is meant to be parted in the most basic way possible. So once someone does sign up for this, then once they read that, then there are other aspects to the letter as well, such as caregiver testimonials and action items that caregivers can take on based on what the letter is about that week, for example. So if you want to subscribe for either the English or French, just go on to those links and you can subscribe for them. And then additionally, we offer tons of different tip sheets on our website. We offer population-specific information as well. And also, I spoke about the financial support page. We have information around the different types of financial options that are available for caregivers across Canada, across the province, some even municipally, and some maybe even organizationally. So some organizations have funding for their catchment, so we try and reflect as much accurate and relevant information as possible on our website. So you can go and check this out as well. And then we work with system and stakeholders throughout the continuum of care, from Ontario health teams to grassroots organizations to libraries like AJAX Library today, to offer education, learning, tons of tools around how to work better with caregivers. And if organizations are looking to build and scale their programs, then offer them guidance and support on how to do so as well. Lastly, I want to talk about the Caregiver Voices platform. So we recently launched this as a way for caregivers to voice their lived experiences. So this platform allows caregivers to participate in a range of different opportunities where they can provide feedback onto what they're seeing on the ground, and make recommendations on what they would like to see in terms of changes to policy, to resources, whatever you may be, whatever you may have. So if there's an organization that is developing a toolkit, for example, or a resource, and they want to get feedback from caregivers, then we put it onto this platform so that caregivers can provide their feedback to make sure that the resource is relevant for caregivers and accurate to what caregivers need. So you can go on to the Caregiver Voices platform and sign up to receive notifications around different opportunities that might be arising. Sometimes there are like research opportunities also for caregivers that we put it onto this platform, so you can access all of those different opportunities throughout the province. And most opportunities, even though they might be coming from different parts of the province, they encourage participation from caregivers across the province. There's not like for the most part, there isn't like a catchment area for most of these opportunities. So again, if you'd like to participate, please go on to the website and sign up for that as well. That is our website, ontariocaregiver.ca/subscribe. So if you go onto that link, you can go and sign up for the monthly newsletter. And that is my contact information. I know I went through a lot of information today, and if you don't have questions now, that's okay. But if you do have questions in the future, feel free to send me an email, and I will try and find you an answer as quickly as possible. And that is it for today.